Hey guys, today we're going to be trying out a full face of e.l.f. dupes, and we're going to see if these viral products that everybody is saying are dupes are actually dupes or if they're just similar products. So I have all e.l.f. products on one side of my face and the high end on the other. So I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments below, which is the e.l.f. side, which is the high end side. And as always, I'm going to give you guys my honest thoughts and opinions. If something is not truly a dupe, I am going to be sure to let you know. And also, if it's your first time here, hi, my name is Jen. I talk about dupes a lot on this channel, as well as drugstore and affordable makeup. So if that's something that interests you, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the first dupe, which is for the Tatcha Silk Canvas Primer. When this came out, everybody was going crazy for it, and a while later, e.l.f. had come out with their Poreless Putty Primer. They both have similar claims, similar textures, they come in little pots, and even the color of the product itself is the same. I actually did do a whole dedicated video to see whether the e.l.f. was a dupe for the Tatcha back then, and it was so long ago, I'm actually trying to remember what my verdict was. I'm pretty sure I decided that it was not a dupe. I felt like they were similar, but not exactly the same. So I'm gonna put the Tatcha over on this side, and then I'm gonna put the e.l.f. over here. Fun fact about that video I did, actually, there was a little controversy at the time because my review came out the same day as Jeffree Star's. And I remember in my thumbnail, I was doing this, like I had both of my hands out and I had the Tatcha on one hand and the e.l.f. on the other. And then I had the prices, and I think Jeffree Star did pretty much the exact same thumbnail. I had some of his followers coming over to my channel and saying that I copied his thumbnail, and I was like, how is that even possible? They came out on the same day. It's a very common pose when people do dupe videos that you have the dupe on one side and the original on the other, and the prices. Not really a new concept, and at the time my channel was very small. I had just started, and to get involved in something like that with somebody as big as Jeffree Star was at the time was really unnerving for me, just having all these people coming and telling me I copied him, which I would never do. I didn't even watch him at the time. I still don't. So let's go in with the putty primer. Right away, I already feel a slight difference in the texture. The putty primer feels a little bit thinner. It's not quite as thick as the Tatcha. It almost feels like more of a whipped product, where the Tatcha one felt a little bit more putty-like. I do see a very noticeable smoothing on this side of my face where I put the Tatcha, and over here, my pores look pretty much the same. I also took some close-up photos so that you can see the differences. I do think the Tatcha side looks a lot smoother. It just did a better job at blurring my pores, and also if I touch each side, I feel like the Tatcha one feels a little bit sticky, and that's good for gripping your foundation. The e.l.f. one just kind of sank into my skin and disappeared, so it feels a little bit more slick on the e.l.f. side, and the Tatcha one just has that sticky or tacky feeling. So I don't think these are exact dupes. I think they perform similarly, but I actually do like the performance of the Tatcha one a little bit better. Next up, let's compare the Anastasia Brow Freeze to the e.l.f. Brow Lift. So these products also extremely similar. I definitely think that e.l.f. was going for a dupe here. The packaging is very similar. The Anastasia one is actually a bit larger and wider, which I like. It's just easier to get the spoolie brush into a bigger pot. The e.l.f. one is small, so I tend to have to bend the spoolie just to be able to pick up the product, whereas I don't really have to do that in the Anastasia one because it's so big. So the Brow Freeze gets some extra points just for packaging alone, but these have extremely similar claims. Both are supposed to give you that microbladed look and keep your brows held up all day long. So let's start with Brow Freeze first. And for somebody who has brows that grow kind of sideways and down, this has been an amazing product because it helps to keep my brows straight up all day. I'll show you the difference here. I mean, you can just basically take this and spike them straight up if you want to. I'm not gonna leave them like this, but I just wanna show you how much hold this actually has. So you can see right away what a difference this makes. The hold is incredible, and once it dries, it would stay like this if I wanted it to, but I'm just gonna brush it a little back to the side this way. Okay, so I just cleaned off the spoolie and I'm going into the e.l.f. one. I've been using both of these for quite a while now, and I do think that the e.l.f. one performs very, very similarly to the Brow Freeze. You can spike up your brows the exact same way with it. The texture and feel of the product is really identical. I would say the biggest difference for me is that sometimes the e.l.f. one doesn't last as long as the Anastasia, and it's weird because it doesn't happen to me every day. Sometimes sometimes the e.l.f. one holds up just as well, and then other days it doesn't. So I don't know if maybe during that day I touched my brow and made it fall. I don't know. I can't really explain it, but as far as the actual product and how it works and performs, for me, these are almost identical. I would say I just give the Anastasia one the slight edge for the packaging and also because it has a better track record at holding my brows in place all day. Next up, we have another primer dupe, and this is the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter versus the e.l.f. Halo Glow Liquid Filter. So these both have very similar claims. They're a multi-use, versatile product. You can use it as a primer. You can mix it in with foundation to add a little bit of glow. You can actually use it on top as a liquid highlighter. And I have both products in the shade Fair. So I'm going to use the Charlotte Tilbury on the high-end side. And this is a really beautiful product. It adds a nice glow to your skin. And not only do I like to use it as primer, but I like to add it on top of my makeup because it gives a very subtle highlight. And I'm not somebody who likes usually that really bold stripe on my cheeks. So I like how natural this one looks. I'll do the same thing. I'll just put a stripe there, stripe here, stripe down here. And I really like the e.l.f. one just as much as the Charlotte Tilbury. I think it does a great job and it gives such a similar effect on the skin. So I want to show you guys just a close-up of both sides so you can see. I really don't see much difference between these two at all. I think they look extremely similar on the skin. So what do you guys think? Can you actually tell a difference between these two? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I do have one more primer dupe to share, but I'm not going to actually put it on because I think this one is pretty well established that it is a true dupe. And this is the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Primer versus the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer. I've compared these two many, many times and they do feel identical on the skin and I feel like they perform the exact same way under foundation. Both of them help to really grip the foundation and make it last all day long. So I can safely say that the e.l.f. Power Grip is definitely a dupe for the Milk Makeup. Moving on, we have the IT Cosmetics CC Cream and the e.l.f. Camo CC Cream. So when the Camo CC Cream first came out, everybody was saying it was a dupe for the IT Cosmetics. I think they copied the packaging. I don't have the full-size IT Cosmetics. I have a little one, but the full size looks just like the packaging of this. And it has very similar claims as far as being full coverage, yet feeling like a moisturizer and having a very natural type of finish. I would say a big difference for me right off the start is that the IT Cosmetics has SPF 50 and it's mineral sunscreen. The e.l.f. has SPF 30 and it has a blend of both chemical and mineral sunscreens. So that's a few points off just for that because chemical sunscreens can sometimes irritate my skin. I like to stick with mineral for the most part. So for me, that's a big difference right away, especially because the IT Cosmetics has SPF 50 versus 30 in the e.l.f. So I'm going to apply the IT Cosmetics to this side of my face. And this is in the shade Light, which is a little bit too dark for me, but I feel like the Fair shade in the IT Cosmetics is a little bit too light. Most of the time I'd rather go a little bit deeper than go lighter. And this has been one of my favorite foundations for so many years. Since before I started my YouTube channel, I used to wear this all the time. It has great coverage, but it looks so natural on your skin. It really feels like you're just applying a moisturizer. And for me, that's a huge plus because I have very dry skin. So I just love how this covers everything and looks natural at the same time. Next, we have the e.l.f. Camo CC Cream, and this one is in the shade Fair. So I'm probably not going to match here, but that's okay. And right away, the e.l.f. definitely feels a little bit thicker than the IT Cosmetics. It doesn't have a fragrance, which I think for some people would be a positive. The IT Cosmetics has a little bit of like a citrus fragrance. I don't know if it's fragrance or essential oils or just something that's in the product that makes it smell that way. But I just wanted to mention that because the e.l.f. one doesn't have a scent to it and some people can be more sensitive to fragrance. Okay, so looking up close in the mirror, I can tell you guys right now that for me, these are not dupes at all. The IT Cosmetics side has a little bit more of a dewy glow and the product is sitting very smoothly on my skin. It's not clinging to dry patches, especially on my chin, which is a trouble spot for me. And my skin just looks very plump and healthy. Then on the other side, I feel like the e.l.f. one looks thicker. It looks makeup-y. It seems to be clinging to texture on my chin. It's sinking into my pores and making them look a little bit more apparent. It almost looks aging on my skin, so I definitely don't like the way this looks. I much prefer the IT Cosmetics side. Next up for concealer, we have the Tarte Shape Tape versus the e.l.f. Camo Concealer. This is the original one, not the hydrating one. To be honest with you, I'm not really a fan of either one of these formulas. Like I said, I do have dry skin, so I usually prefer something a little bit more hydrating, but I still want to compare them side by side so we can see if there are any differences. So I'm just going to put the Shape Tape on the inner and outer corners, and I'm just going to pat this in with my finger. By the way, this is the shade Fair Light Neutral in the Tarte. One thing I will say is that this covers absolutely everything. And because it's a little bit on the drier side, I feel like it sets down on its own and I don't need to add setting powder underneath. So that is one thing I do like about it. And then here we have the Camo Concealer, and this is in the shade Fair Beige. So I'm going to do the same thing, just put one dot right here and one in the inner corner. This one might be a little bit lighter than the Shape Tape. So as I'm blending it out, the Camo Concealer feels a little bit drier to me and a little bit thicker. It's not quite as easy to blend into the skin as the Tarte was. But like the Tarte one, it has really, really good coverage. And again, just looking at my eyes closely in the mirror, I actually do see a little bit of a difference here. I think the Tarte one is sitting pretty smoothly around my eye area compared to the e.l.f. I think the e.l.f. one is settling into the little fine lines underneath my eye just a little bit more. And the skin around my eyes where I put the e.l.f. looks a little bit more textured, while on the Tarte side, the skin just looks smoother. So for me, the only thing that's really similar about these two is that they're both very full coverage concealers, but I think that the Tarte one felt a little creamier, it was easy to blend, and it looks more natural under my eyes than the e.l.f. one, which I felt was a little bit stiffer. It didn't blend out with as much ease as the Tarte did, and it seems to be settling into the wrinkles under my eye a little bit more. So I also would not call this an exact dupe. I actually like the Tarte one better. Let's go back to brows. I wanted to fill them in with a brow pencil, and here we have the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Wiz versus the e.l.f. Ultra Precise Brow Pencil. Both of these are in the shade Taupe. Both of them have a spoolie on one side and a really tiny micro tip on the other. I think a lot of the drugstore brands have tried to dupe the Anastasia Brow Wiz, and I think several of them really come close. The NYX one I think is probably the closest to the Anastasia, I feel like, and I haven't tried the e.l.f. one in a while, so I wanted to try it again and see how they compare directly. So let's start with the Anastasia first. So I'm just going to fill in a few sparse areas here. I've actually been liking brow pens a little bit more than actual pencils lately. I just find that they look very natural. All right, next let's try the e.l.f. Ultra Precise Brow Pencil. For some reason, it's not sticking as well as the Anastasia one. I feel like I have to keep going over and over the same spots, and it's just not filling them in quite as easily. But if I go over each spot a couple of times, it seems to work out okay. I don't know, to me the Anastasia one just feels a little bit creamier, and it seems to apply the color a little bit better as well. I feel like I'm kind of struggling with this brow over here. So I would have to say these are not dupes. They're both slim brow pencils, but I think the Anastasia one was much easier to use and it just sticks to my skin a little bit better than the e.l.f. one. Moving on to cheeks, I've seen so many people compare these two. We have the Cover FX Blush Duo versus the e.l.f. Bite Size Cheek Duo. So this is in the shade Soft Peach in the Cover FX, and the e.l.f. one is Watermelon. So both of these products have a matte blush on one side and a highlighter on the other. And what I've seen people doing online is just taking their blush brush and dipping into both of them together and applying them to their cheeks. So that's what I'm gonna do. I know that the Cover FX ones are super, super pigmented, so you really only need the tiniest little bit with this one, but I wanna see if we can just at least get the same result. So we'll do the Cover FX one over here. I'm just gonna pick up a little of both products. It's a shame that Cover FX isn't available in stores anymore, but they do still have a website and these blush duos are still available. This color is so beautiful and I love that little bit of glow that the highlighter gives. And then I'm gonna go into the e.l.f. duo over here. Okay, this is actually very pigmented. I haven't used these in a while. All right, so this I actually could say it is a dupe. It really gives the same effect on the skin, and I didn't have to try that hard with the e.l.f. one. You guys saw it is really pigmented right out of the gate, just like the Cover FX one. And dipping the brush into the highlighter and the blush just gives this beautiful glowy cheek, and it looks so similar to this one. So I actually think we can call this one a dupe. It really gives the same effect on the skin, the same end result. So that's awesome because I want to say these bite-size palettes are like $3. That's really, really good. Next up, a lot of people have compared the e.l.f. Bite Size palette in Cream and Sugar to the Natasha Denona Mini Nude palette. So when e.l.f. first came out with these Bite Size palettes, there were a lot of comparisons going on between these and Natasha Denona. Now I feel like every drugstore brand is coming out with these little palettes. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky because I don't have the same colors in these palettes. I think they're close, but the crease color, for example, is a little bit deeper in the Natasha Denona than it is in the e.l.f. So my eye looks are going to come out a little bit different, but we can still get an idea of how the eyeshadows apply. So I'm going to start out with this shade for my crease from the Natasha Denona palette, and her shadows are incredibly pigmented. So right away, this is showing up very nicely. Okay, then over here in the e.l.f. palette, we have this shade right here, which is definitely a lot lighter, but we'll still see how it goes on. The e.l.f. shadow definitely feels more blendable. It has a lighter, more powdery feel, while the Natasha Denona shadows have more of a velvety, kind of thicker feel. I think the e.l.f. ones are actually a little bit easier to blend, to be honest with you, if you're more of a beginner. I think they're just a bit more user-friendly. Next, I'm just going to deepen up the crease with this shimmer shade over here. The e.l.f. palette has a similar color, and I think I can probably deepen the look up a little bit with that one, just to get these to look more even. All right, so I'm going to use this one in the e.l.f. palette. And hopefully we can get these two sides to look just a little bit more similar. Yeah, I feel like that definitely is deepening things up a little bit. Next, I'm going to take this dark shade from Natasha Denona and just put this in my outer corner. So I'm just going to apply this to the outer V and then blend. And then in the e.l.f. palette, I'm going to use this darker shade right here and just apply it the same way. This is actually pretty nicely pigmented. So let's see if it blends out the same as the Natasha one did. So when I go to blend this out, it fades a bit more than the Natasha Denona one did. I felt like this one sort of kept its pigmentation and this one faded. So I kind of have to go back in and just add a little bit more. I think you can get the same look. You just might have to build things up a little bit on the e.l.f. side, but the shadows are still performing really well over here. All right, and then for the lid, I'm going to apply this shade right here, and I'm just going to pat that on with my finger. This is applying really nicely, even without primer. It's nicely pigmented, it grips to my skin really well, and it really pops without having to wet it with a setting spray, which is really nice. And then we have this shade here in the e.l.f. palette. So it's this lighter shimmer. Wow, look at that, you guys. This applies honestly just as well, if not better. I almost feel like the e.l.f. shadow is popping more than the Natasha Denona one. And the pigmentation is insane. I haven't used these bite-sized palettes in a while, but I'm actually remembering why I like them so much. That's pretty incredible, to be honest with you. And the shades are not exactly the same. I think the darker shade in the e.l.f. palette is more of a cool brown, while the Natasha Denona one is a little bit more warm. It's more of a reddish brown. Also, the crease colors were not the same, but I kind of tried to make up for that with this warmer brown shimmer shade, and I think it definitely did deepen up this side over here. So I think it's pretty clear that you can get almost the same result with the e.l.f. bite-sized palettes as you can with the Natasha Denona. Granted, the formulas are not exactly the same. The colors aren't exactly the same. So I don't know if I can go so far as to say this is a dupe for this. If you're talking about the technical term of a dupe being an exact copy, no, it's not technically a dupe, but is it an amazing, affordable alternative? Yes. Moving on for mascara, we have the Benefit Roller Lash versus the e.l.f. Lash and Roll. And I actually have an entire video just dedicated to this dupe right here. And after trying both of these now for several weeks, I can definitely say that they are a dupe. They have the same claims. The brushes are very similar. The packaging is similar. Not that packaging really matters, but you could tell just by the packaging and the name alone that e.l.f. was trying to dupe Roller Lash. And the texture of the product is definitely very similar. They apply almost identically. And when I was finished applying them, I felt like my lashes on both sides looked exactly the same. In fact, the Roller Lash sometimes smudges under my eyes and the e.l.f. one doesn't. It is so long lasting and it doesn't smudge or flake. So I would definitely call these a dupe. I feel like my lashes look the same on both sides. Both of them give length, volume, curl, and I think I actually like the e.l.f. one better because it doesn't smudge. So I would definitely call this one a dupe. Next up for lips, we have the e.l.f. O Face lipstick versus the NARS Audacious lipstick. So I've also already compared these in another dupe video and they are so incredibly really similar. From the sleek black packaging, the magnetic closures that both of these have, to the actual shape of the lipstick bullet itself and the brand logo stamped into it, to just the formula, which is a creamy satin finish lipstick with amazing pigmentation, just one swipe, and they're both an incredibly long-lasting formula. So I think that there's really no difference whatsoever between these two. I'm going to use the shade Anna from NARS. And then this is the shade Effortless from e.l.f. And these are actually almost the exact same color as well. So this is another one that I can say with absolute certainty after having tried these both for weeks now that this is definitely a dupe. All right, so let's go ahead and do a quick recap. As far as the non-dupes, I would say the Tatcha and Poreless Putty Primer, not a dupe. The CC Creams, also not a dupe. Shape Tape and Camo Concealer, also not a dupe. And you know what? I was gonna put the e.l.f. Brow Lift in the yes, it's a dupe category, but now I'm just looking at my brows in the mirror. And look at the brow lift side versus brow freeze. Brow freeze has kept my brow just standing straight up exactly the way I left it. Even filling them in didn't seem to mess with it at all. And then over here we have brow lift and my brow is already drooping. The hairs are going sideways again. So it just didn't hold up, unfortunately. I think the times that maybe it has held up, I just got lucky, I guess. So this, I would say, is not a dupe. And while I really love the e.l.f. Bite Size palettes, I don't feel like they're Natasha Denona dupes as far as the formula goes, but I still think they're an amazing little eyeshadow and they're a great alternative to this if you don't want to pay the higher price tag. Then when it comes to actual dupes that I think perform the exact same way, the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer versus the Milk Hydro Grip, these are identical. Also, the e.l.f. Halo Glow versus the Charlotte Tilbury would also go in the yes category. I really can't tell the difference between these two. e.l.f. Lash and Roll versus Roller Lash, also a dupe. And the O Face Lipstick versus the Audacious Lipstick from NARS, also a dupe. And I have to give it to the e.l.f. Bite Size Cheek Palette. It really did create the exact same look as the Cover FX on my cheek, and it was super pigmented. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the yes, it's a dupe category. All right, so I think that was everything. We actually have 5 that are dupes and 5 that aren't dupes. Oh wait, I did forget one, the brow pencil. So I'm gonna have to put this in the not a dupe category. Yes, it is a skinny brow pencil, but I just feel like the Anastasia one is superior. It sticks to the skin a lot better. I felt like the e.l.f. one was stiffer and just harder to blend on my skin. If you're looking for a good dupe for the Anastasia, I like the NYX one a lot better. So I would probably go with that as a better dupe than the e.l.f. So anyway, this was a lot of fun. If you'd like to see me do this again with another brand, let me know. And also let me know what brand down below. If you like dupes and you have some more time and you'd like to watch some other videos on my channel, I'll go ahead and put my dupes playlist right up here and you can check those out. I want to thank you guys so much for spending part of your day here with me. I really appreciate it so much. And if you're new to my channel, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button before you go. Thanks guys, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.